Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune. Joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson and Ish. We're cranking out the podcast this week. We
Yeah.
had Mark Campbell on, so go check that out. We posted that on Thursday. We're posting this on Friday. On earlier this week, we had the men's basketball top 10 backcourts and front courts. So it's basketball season as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, I know we're kind of, I guess we're at the is this midway, I guess, technically to football, you can kind of say, I guess.
It's week 7, I think, of college football. So a lot of teams have had their one bye. So.
Yeah. So I am definitely in full basketball because I'm already tired of the season, the football season.
Yeah, got plenty of. I mean, Baylor, TCU, A&M. A&M's been good. Texas has been good, but
Yeah.
UTSA sucks. North Texas is great as
I was
always.
about to say, our schools, our alma maters are great, but
Yeah.
that's kind of all I'm really paying attention to right now as far as like entertainment.
Sam Houston won.
Sam
UTEP won.
they lost this one. They lost.
Oh, they lost.
Yeah, they lost narrowly.
They were 5-1, or what were they? Weren't they
5-1,
one loss?
yeah.
Yeah. Damn. What a shame. Anyways, we're on to the women's basketball top 10s, top 10 backcourts, top 10 front courts. And this one, the men's, I felt like I had really good feel for the pecking order. This one, I texted you last night at 2 a.m. and I was like, I'm going to need your help here to figure out where these go, because these, I think there's a good debate that could be had around any of these. And keep in mind, like we've said, it's kind of a pound for pound type thing where it's, clearly a team in the Southland is not the same as a team in the Big 12, but we, hold them in regard of making the tournament and trying to win their conference. That's the standard that we have. So with that being said, are you ready? Do you want to jump into it? Do you have any thoughts before we go?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say overall, before we get into it, this one was definitely harder than the men's, I would say. I'd say the men's you had easy ones at the top, kind of a discussion in the middle.
Yeah.
But like, I think the 10 for both front court and back court were like known. I don't think there was a big discussion as far as like who the 10 were. It was just like in some order, obviously.
Yeah. We'll start with the backcourts here. Yeah. The guards going from 1 down to 10, and then we'll have some honorable mentions as well. I was fairly impressed the backcourts in this state are pretty deep. I think we could have gone like 13 deep here. But at number 1, I think this is just clear. You tell me if you think number 2 or number 3 maybe could be in contention here, but I think number 1 is obvious. I think number 1 is Texas. And then I think we can include number 2, which is not, I think, like I said, Texas clear number 1. Then I have TCU at number 2 here. Yeah. I think those are the top 2 backcourts in Texas this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you look at what Texas was able to do without their best player last year. I think it showed a lot of stability as far as like players knowing their roles. Obviously, Shea Holly wasn't a scorer for them, but like her playing along with Shayla Gonzalez, starting and basically playing the entire game more or less down the stretch. It showed that they knew their role because it turns out, hey, Madison Booker is like one of the best playmakers in the country already. And so I know there was a discussion between, like, what is Madison Booker is she a forward? Is she a backcourt? She plays in the backcourt, right? That's kind of how we see it. Whether or not she's a small forward or whatever, I think she'll obviously start as a small forward, but her role will be a guard. Her role will be the secondary playmaker to Rory Harmon in this offense.
Yeah, it's handle the ball, shoot the ball, create for others. Like I just think she is much more of a guard than she is a forward.
Right.
Did you have any problem with the SEC release their all conference accolades and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Rory Harmon, second team Madison Booker SEC co-player of the year. Like
no, I'm not. It didn't bother me that much because I know like there's always some hesitancy in my opinion for like players coming off injury.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Rory Harmon did miss kind of most of the season. And so based off what she did, you have to give her some credit, obviously, as being an all conference caliber player. But I think Madison Booker earned the right to be known as the alpha, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, like heading into the season. Because, I think obviously we'll see how it plays out, and I eventually think Rory Harmon will be back to her normal self and running that offense. But
Mhm.
I think over the course of last season, we saw Madison Booker. I remember the discussion of like, oh, who's the freshman of the year? Is it Madison Booker? Is it Audie Crooks? And then they just said, oh, what if we just give Madison Booker Player of the Year? It was like, okay, let's just end that discussion right now.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, well that solves everything because it turns out she was that good.
Yeah. I'm just excited to see them play together, honestly.
Because it was like when they did, it wasn't like Madison Booker was like what she eventually was.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious because like, and this is where we can maybe come into a couple of the other the new addition to this team in Layla Fela. You need somebody to shoot the ball, right? Because these two players are very capable scorers,
Yeah.
not necessarily capable shooters.
Hmm.
Harmon does not shoot the ball a lot. And then Madison Booker obviously is more of an inside mid-range
Mid-range. Yeah.
game. Honestly, they both kind of like that high post mid-range game. So it's like, okay, you need somebody. Shea Holly's going to be flared out, but it's like, okay, you need somebody else to be there. And Layla Fela is like, Felia is like, okay, she can shoot the ball, but also she's a very capable scorer. So like, is she reduced? Like, does that hurt
Yeah.
at all that she's like probably going to be reduced in this offense?
Yeah. I would be concerned if, and I do think there is some question marks in terms of the shooting on this team,
Yeah.
but Vic Schaefer doesn't care about shooting.
I was about to say, like, we've
It's kind of
seen
like
how
Kim
many
Mulkey.
teams
He's
make
he's
it work.
more he's more not he's not he doesn't care about shooting like more than even like Kim Mulkey, I would say.
Right.
Like
Yeah, that's fair.
he
That's fair.
is really just he likes the mid-range jumpers and he'll live with it. And I mean, obviously this
He'll
is
beat you up
fine.
inside.
It becomes a question mark whenever you play the top teams in the country, clearly,
Sure.
and South Carolina, UConn, go down the list, can all shoot the ball very, very well. So we'll see. But
Yeah.
this is the best backcourt in Texas, especially with the addition of Layla Filia from Michigan, like you said. TCU at number 2
Yeah.
was also kind of obvious to me.
Mhm.
Madison Connor, we just had Mark Campbell on to talk about all this, but Madison Connor returns, Una Jovanovic returns. Then they add Haley Van Lith and Maddie Scher and Donovan Hunter, who we did not
Mhm.
ask Mark Campbell about. But I remember talking about her when she joined there. It's like, oh, she was all Pac-12 freshman team and started every game on an Oregon State team that was pretty good. Is like
Yeah.
another guard that they have there. So that's 5 deep of very, very capable players. So, I mean, very good players, not just capable. That's very good players. So they're
Right.
going to have a lot of different interesting lineups. I think they're clearly number 2 here.
Yeah, I mean, just sheer depth, like we don't even have to get to like how we think we think this team is gonna be. Just like the fact that let's see, one, two, three, four, five, any 5 of these players starts on any other Big
Yeah.
12 team. Like any other, you can pluck any single one of these, and they're probably starting for anybody. Honestly, you can even like they're earning minutes at worst a 6th player on like South Carolina. Right, like they're working their way into a lineup somewhere, and so I don't know. I love the depth here. It's just going to be about how good can they all be. Like it's like that's my thing. Is like, cool. You have a starting lineup full of basically plus a 6-man of a backcourt. What happens now? Like how do they all get it together? How do they all play together? Some of these are similar skill sets. But as far as just pure talent, yeah, I think like Rory Harmon and Madison Booker are the best backcourt probably in the country, or at least 1 or 2, 3, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, TCU has probably the best depth in the state, regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, TCU, I can't believe that they weren't ranked in top 25 going into the year, like we talked about with Coach Campbell. It's
Yeah,
gonna be really again, we have to see it all come together. We have to see how the lineups look. We have to see them
sure.
defend also. This is not a group of high level defenders, just
That's a
overall
very good point.
for this team. So
And we'll get
we'll
we'll
see
get
that.
to the front court in a bit. How that's going to be a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't care about the defense. Just they're gonna score like
They're gonna score
80, they're gonna score like 80 points a game. So
Yeah.
I don't care. The next, I think we can group the next 3 together because
Mhm.
these are all teams that, I mean, North Texas, it's going to be number 3 Baylor, number 4 North Texas, number 5 Lamar.
Yeah.
All groups that return their starters from last year And honestly, if we go down to 6, that's another team that returns their starters from last year. A very successful seasons. Baylor, Jada Walker, Sarah Andrews, Bella Fauntleroy, and then
Yeah.
off the bench, Yaya Felder, and then they add Jennings from JUCO as well. So you basically know what you have in them, and we love their backcourt. We know how reliant they are. I think having, which we'll talk about the front courts in a minute, but
Mhm.
I think adding Aronette, Vonleh in their front court will help open them up. So I think Baylor. I texted you. I think 3 through 6 can go like in almost any direction here,
Yeah.
but I'm cool with Baylor at 3 just because of Sarah Andrews being the best player in this section, and then
Mhm.
Jada Walker, Bella Fauntleroy, and so on.
Yeah, I think I'm very excited to see what Jada Walker can do because the way she ended last year was
Yeah.
phenomenal, right? We mentioned that was the Virginia Tech game that she kind of went off in,
Hmm.
in the tournament, where it was like if they can get that Jada Walker or at least 75% of that Jada Walker for most of the year, like I think that unlocks another level of Sarah Andrews potentially. I'm kind of still waiting for Bella Fauntleroy to kind of take that next step as well. So like I agree, Hugh. I stick with what we know, and like you mentioned, plus them having the best player out of this bunch, I'm fully comfortable with them being number 3.
Now, North Texas, I think the addition of Kyla Deck from Stephen F.
Very,
Austin
very underrated. Yeah.
put them in this group because they returned Ariana Hardaway, they returned
Yes.
Desiree Wooten, they returned Jacqueline Moore, they returned
Yes.
Shamira Duncan, and then they add Kyla Deck. And that to me is going to be one of the best backcourts in the American Athletic Conference. It might be the best. I know they were voted second in
Yeah.
the AAC poll. So
Mhm.
we're talking about a team that's again going to be competing to make the tournament, competing to win their conference off rip, and it's in large part because of this backcourt depth. Like Burton, Coach Burton last year, I think he had talent, and I think
Yeah.
he did have some depth, but it was a lot of figuring out the pieces. This year, I feel real comfortable that he knows what he has, and he's just gonna plug in Deck and just
Yeah.
go. So I love this North Texas backcourt at 4. Again, you could move them around 3, 4, 5, 6, wherever, but that's very, very good.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest thing that, along with just having a playmaker in Kyla Deck to kind of come in and settle things, I think she adds actually like I think the one thing this team should needed, I think last year was a little bit more 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
I think they have capable like shooters like Jacqueline Moore, but like other options like her. Um, and obviously Kylie Deck's not a gunner necessarily like Jacqueline Moore, but like I think somebody who, if Jacqueline Moore needs something or they kick it back out or something and they have somebody, she gets it back at the, shot clock's winding down or something, right? She can put something up that's reliable. I believe she was, let me see. She shot just under 35% last year, and she was 4 out of 4,600 players, which is what her hoops kind of ranks everybody out of.
Hmm.
She was 436 in terms of 3-pointers attempted. So Kyla Deck was,
Yeah.
sorry, Kyla Deck was. So you compare that to North Texas last year, who you look at their 3-point rate. And their their percentage of points from 3 was only 18%. That was 334 to 360
Mhm.
teams.
Yeah.
So when you look at where that next step can be, it comes from just like being more of a threat from the outside. So I think she adds a lot. And then hopefully, like I said, I hope Jacqueline Moore continues to kind of ascend back to her
Yeah.
UIW self.
Deck was also named to the WAC All Defensive Team. So
There you
there's
go.
that as well.
Yeah.
This section of this 3 through 6,
Mhm.
we obviously know about the 1 and 2s, but 3 through 6, I think, can be classified as like conference title contending backcourts.
Mhm.
Because then you get to Lamar, and we love Lamar on this podcast. Shout
Yes.
out Aqua Franklin and company.
Yes.
Um, they went 17-1 last year in conference. They were incredible, and they returned everybody from that team.
Yes.
Backcourt, front court, you name it.
Expectations are through the roof, or they
Yeah.
should be at least.
Now it's, I think we joked with coach. It's like, well, if you don't go 18-0, then sorry, it's a
Yeah, it's over.
disappointing
Honeymoon's
year.
over.
But Sabria Dean comes back, who is phenomenal in the Southland, just really, really efficient mid range, gets to the rim. Armani Taylor, another starter, returns. JC Denley, starter, returns. Then they had 2 junior college players that filled it up, like 20 points per game in JUCO, KJ Walker, Bella Stafford.
Yeah.
So if they can get production from them off the bench, I feel great about them because scoring was an issue at
Sure.
times. But we
Yeah.
knew how tough they were. We know they rebounded and stuff, but you add 2 JUCO players that average 20 a game. You hope that secondary punch can come in when you need it in terms of scoring. But Lamar, I mean, they're going to be the favorites or one of the favorites in the Southland again, and yeah, really good backcourt.
Yeah, no, I have nothing else to add there. I mean, they are one of the favorites.
Now,
But like you mentioned, a little bit more dynamism, I guess you can probably call it as far as
yeah.
scoring goes. Maybe could be where they can maybe take another step.
Now, I do want to do number 6 by themselves because I think personally this is like the end of like a tier, and maybe I should have
Mm-hmm.
just included them at the beginning. But A&M Corpus Christi, we know how good of a program they have there. Again, they return their starters. Like
Yeah,
this is the I feel like maybe mid majors get picked off a bit more, but in women's basketball, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's as bad as the men's side in terms of just complete turnover.
yeah,
Like these schools in the mid majors are typically be able to keep their teams, and which has been really really nice. Again, another team, A&M Corpus Christi, Paige Allen returns, Maria Aguado returns.
mhm,
That's two players that average 11 points per game. Then Annika Wiltstead returns, Timberland Criswell, and so on. And then they added a junior college player in Samora Watson who could score. So again, returning players that are going to be competing for conference championships. Like,
yeah,
yeah, you deserve to be fairly high on this list with that. So,
yeah.
um,
No, I agree. Especially when you lose somebody like Alicia Westbrook, who's
yep.
finally gone, and so you're going to rely a lot more on those players like Paige Allen.
We can just run through the rest here.
Yeah.
Typing them out. Number 7, we have Rice. Number 8, UTSA. Number 9, UT Arlington, and number 10, Abilene Christian.
Hmm.
We don't have to go one by one here. I will say, figuring out 7 through 9, you sent me a revised order here, which I'm fine with,
Yeah.
but it is. I think all three of them. This is like the very good category, but still needs to kind of prove it in a sense.
Right. For me, that's why I kind of went that way with UTA, who I eventually thought should be 9.
Mhm.
And that's how I kind of settled with Rice over UTSA as well. UTSA is a big hole to fill without Kira White, right? I think Sydney Love is going to be a great, going to continue to be great. Nina DeLeon is going to be great for them. I liked her a lot at UIW. That's still a lot of Asia Proctor is going to have to step up a lot, right? When I looked at that Rice lineup, I saw less questions. That was my only thing. Dominique Ennis is back. Jazzy Owens Barnett is back, who kind of played a bigger role last year. Emily Kloschek as well. Victoria Flores, I think, was a very underrated pickup from TCU. She was kind of thrusted into the starting lineup with all those injuries that we talked about, of course, with Mark Campbell. I think she's going to be somebody who doesn't necessarily do everything that Rice needs to make up for who they lost, but does a lot of it. And I think that she's going to be in a better situation
Yeah.
potentially than having to play maybe in the Big 12.
Yeah, and again, speaking of the reason I think I had Rice initially lower was the departure of Destiny Jackson.
Yeah, it's a huge loss. Huge loss.
I mean, we had Coach Edmonds on, and she was like, "Yeah, we got to replace her with everybody," and they do have enough talent to do so. So I'm perfectly fine with this. Like I said, Flores being
Yeah.
picked up is good. We just kind of need to see it.
Mhm.
Everybody step up their game a little bit more to get there. Yeah, UTSA should be real. I didn't realize how. Like I knew Asia Proctor was a good freshman. I didn't realize
Mhm.
how much they leaned on her last year.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now it's about again continue. She shot like 38% from 3. I
Right.
mean, she was really good. So
Mhm.
we'll see how they continue to progress. And then UT Arlington, Talia Clark, Nia Threat, 2 returning starters, and then they add Aspen Thornton from Abilene Christian, who
Yeah.
was like 10 points a game last year, good shooter. So I love that pickup. That's why I think UT Arlington definitely should be in the mix here. Abilene Christian returns Peyton Hull and Bella Earl, 2 top scorers, 11 points
Mhm.
per game roughly between them. I think Hull was at 13 actually. But
Yeah.
then Mia Rivers from A&M Kingsville and a couple other transfers as well. So Abilene Christian, I think, rounds it out. Yeah, it's a good group. I like this top 10 here. Anybody in the honorable mentions that you want to talk about here? I have Texas Tech, Houston, and SFA as
I think
honorable mentions.
those are a lot of I could see all those 3 working themselves into like a end of year ranking, but like right now I think there's a clear delineation.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, again, we can. It's going to be a big year for Krista Gerlich. She needs to have a good year. And so I think that Shavers and Maupin is a very good backcourt, but is it good enough for the Big 12, right?
Yeah, that's the question.
Houston, I like Kateri Poole, right? I like that pickup and teaming them with Layla Blair. I think that's a really potentially really good, but again, Big 12 good? We'll see. I like the Ashley Chevalier pickup. I think that she's going to be potentially an addition for them. But it's just that I don't know in the conference, right? That I like them as like winning record in conference backcourts, which
I
is
mean,
kind of where we
even
agree.
yeah, which everybody in this top 10 should have a winning record in conference.
Yes.
And Houston is projected to come in last in the Big 12.
I was about to say, yeah.
Like Layla Blair is clearly, if you were just going off talent,
Oh, sure.
Layla Blair alone
She's a conference Big 12 type of player. Yes.
she is what Coach Huey said is like a Big 12 player.
Yeah.
And the problem is they didn't have much around her, so she became inefficient. She doesn't pass the ball great. It's like it's hard. And then I think Kateri Poole's good.
I was about to say
Yeah.
she was part of the national championship
No,
LSU
she
team,
can
but it's like,
definitely play.
can they be a number 2, 3?
I liked her on LSU as a number 6. That's
Yeah.
that's the standard. But again, Chevalier didn't put up huge numbers. She started a lot, didn't put up so it's good, not great. You mentioned
Yeah.
it. I think Texas Tech is the closest here. Shavers, Maupin. They added Danae Fritz from Baylor.
Mhm.
So I mean, I think you could argue put Texas Tech in this group. I need
Right
to
now,
see it.
no. Yeah,
I need to see it. They won 4 games in the Big 12 last year.
exactly.
I need to see it. And then shout out to SFA as well, which is it's a whole new team over there pretty much
Yeah,
after
again.
that. So that made ranking SFA very, very hard in this backcourt and front courts when you're comparing them to a bunch of rosters that have returners. But a couple good players here. I know Faith Blackstone from Coppin State put up numbers, was a very good player over there. So we'll see how they do. On to the front courts. Number 1 again. And I thought about it. I thought about it for a second because just in terms of what these teams need from their front courts, like I think there's other teams that need more from their front
Mhm.
courts, in particular UTSA, who I have at number 2.
Yeah.
But Texas to me is number 1 still. Aaliyah Moore, Taylor Jones. They add Kyla Oldekray. How do you think you say that?
Yes. I think you
Oldekray.
had it right. Older
We'll just say Kyla. From Miami, and then there Justin Carlton was a top 15 player out in the country there. So I do think they are very good. I think they're going to score a lot. We know it's a Vic Schaefer. He's going to post them up. So Texas number 1. And then I have UTSA, I think, as number 2. I think I'm pretty confident in that. Jordan Jenkins alone gives me confidence.
Yeah, yeah. I was about to say, I think Texas is a clear number 1, don't get me wrong. I think Aaliyah Moore, Taylor Jones, that was the best front court in the Big 12, probably outside of maybe Iowa State late.
Yeah.
But I think those 2 returning adds so it plays perfectly into Vic Schaefer, right? The fact that he has 2 bigs
Yeah.
and then Madison Booker can be the 3, right? On many other teams, Madison Booker maybe plays the 4, and then more Jones probably comes off the bench or something, but they're gonna start. Justice Carlton adding to that is kind of ridiculous. The fact that you can add a top 15 player in their recruiting class and just say, yeah, you can be the 8th, 9th man in this team, is going to be nuts. So I'm very excited to see, honestly, this front court. Obviously, Roy Harmon and Madison Booker are great, but it's this front court is why I was so excited to see them go to the SEC, is because Vic Schaefer knows what you need in the SEC, and it's size. And Texas went and they had size and they got more size.
Yeah.
So, this is easily the best backcourt in the state. UTSA, yeah, you mentioned it. You can just start and stop with Jordan Jenkins, but the fact that they were able to do so well without her last year, with Adara Udo, with Maya Linton, man, that just makes this even better. I think if with just Jordan Jenkins, they probably fall around to about 3 or 4, maybe, right? Just on paper. But then you add the fact that she wasn't around most of last year and they were still fine. The front court looked really good. So, yeah, I think they're number 2 is easy for me.
Now,
3 or 4, I'm kind of interested in your take on, because I agree with it, but I'm just interested.
I was going to ask, you read my mind. I was going to ask you, would you flip them? We have TCU at 3
Yeah.
and Baylor at 4.
No, right now, no, because of course we should mention that we're counting Agnes Amanopu in the front court for
Yes.
TCU. She's listed as a guard, but she played a lot of the 4, obviously because of injury last year. But I also think that Mark
He's
Campbell
gonna
kind
play
of,
4 this
I
year
was about to
too.
say, I think that Mark Campbell really liked what he saw from her as a small ball 4. So I would not be surprised if
And
it's
she's 6
3/.
foot. So
She's
again,
6 foot. I'm not saying I'm quote unquote small ball 4.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
yeah.
I mean? But Sedona Prince, I mean, similar to the Jordan Jenkins effect, this is the Sedona Prince effect. We saw what she was before she got hurt. She
Yeah.
was one of the 5 best players in the Big 12 last year, like not close. And so you add her, and then you just pair her. And I believe you can also put Aaliyah Roberson on this list too,
Mhm.
who kind of had to be thrusted into the starting center spot. So like you add her, and you add somebody who TCU's problem last year was that when Sedona Prince wasn't on the floor. And so now you add somebody like a Deja Turner who's back healthy. You
Yeah.
add a Aaliyah Roberson who got experience. So like now you don't have to play Sedona Prince a ton. Then you add, maybe you go tall and you go Sedona Prince, Deja Turner, or you go Sedona Prince, Aaliyah Roberson. But then you can also have that shooting and that ball handling with Agnes Amanopu. So I think the versatility, I'm fine with TCU. Baylor, I think they had the best pickup probably out of these 4
Yeah.
teams, honestly,
For sure.
and Aaronette Vonleh, but it's still wait and see. That's a lot of pressure on her to kind of mask a lot of deficiencies that you've had in the front court. I like Dariana Littlepage Bugs. She kind of I don't want to say stagnated a little bit last year. She was okay. But it wasn't, I think her freshman year set her up in my eyes to be like
Yeah.
superstar status. Maybe this is the year where she's more of that. I don't know. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
okay with 4 for them.
Madison Bartley also missed. I
Yeah,
don't remember,
that's true.
but she missed a lot of time last year, so they get her back. So we'll see. But
Yeah.
I do think TCU is more deep and versatile. So
Mhm.
I think them at the 3 is good. Then we go to a grouping that I can't separate.
This is an interesting one. I think you got the order right though. I do think that.
Okay, let's 5 is Rice,
Mhm.
6 is Lamar, 7 is North Texas, and then I'm even gonna throw 8 in there of UT Arlington
Sure.
because I think they're gonna be really good as well. So that's 6 through 8.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? You just want to start with
We can go 5
why
and
Rice?
6 because I think to me at least 5 and 6 was the one that could have been switched.
Okay.
I think obviously we mentioned Lamar, right? We mentioned Akasha Davis and Jay Weems, Justice Rod. They're returning everybody.
Yeah.
And so it was like, if you want to just give them, the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, they're returning everybody, boom, they go first. But also where Rice is strong this year is going to be in their front court, which
Yeah.
they kind of return a lot of people too. So they returned Malia Fisher, who I thought broke out last year as like, there was a lot of pressure on her and she stepped up a lot. Shelby Hayes, who stepped up a lot, similar to Jazzy Owens Barnett as a sophomore. And then you mentioned Sussy there as well. Like, I think Rice, and by the way, we should also mention Rice won the conference too. Like, out of that whole chaos, and like Rice was the one that came
They
out.
did. They came
And
out of it.
so, out of all the chaos, it was like, we're not just talking about Lamar as a team that won the conference. Like, hey, by the way, Rice did too. So it was like, okay, yeah, I'm okay putting Rice as the team who, and also probably looked better. I know it's talent disparities and all that, but looked better in their tournament game, right? They
Yeah.
just did. They
Oh, yeah,
had
yeah.
LSU on the ropes for a while.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So
Lamar came short. They came up short in their tournament. They won the
yeah,
regular season, ended up losing in the conference
right.
to was it Corpus Christi made it out the Corpus Christi
Again,
made it
yes.
to the tournament because they played USC. I remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no problem with that. Malia Fisher is really good. I will Lamar. I believe Justice Ross was the one that they added from New Orleans. That when we talked to Aqua Franklin about, she was really excited to
Mhm.
get on there. So you add her onto Akasha Davidson and Jay Williams. I think the backcourt for Lamar this year is going to be more important in terms of, like I said, we know what they have, like toughness, rebounding wise. They need
Yeah.
a scoring punch. So yeah, we'll see if they can be more efficient in the front court this year. But then 7, North Texas returns to Misha Lampkin, who was really, really good. But after that, we'll see Jalen Tall from Stetson was a really good player over there. Adele Tack we talked about is still injured, but
Mhm.
should be a good player. So I think North Texas deserves to be in this area. And then 8, UT Arlington, who was pretty damn good last year. Avery Brittingham
Yeah.
is joined by another Stephen F. Austin player this year in Zoe Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
So the SFA girls have joined up.
They're either in Morgantown or they're in or they're in
Yeah,
Arlington.
some of them went to Morgantown, some of them went to Arlington, and Avery Brittingham and Zoe Nelson are bringing the lumberjack swag over to the Mavericks. So
I mean, they
those
needed it
two
was a good step for them last year. We were kind of worried about UTF for a little bit.
we
They took
very
a
much
they took
were.
a decent step to get back to where they need to
Yeah.
be.
Then they added a couple of good players that I like, Laura Bello and Coy Love
Yeah.
from USC. So UT Arlington legitimately should be, in that group
Yeah.
of top 5, top 4 in their conference this year. So that's the top 8. Then we can jump to number 9. This is where I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I
Oh, yeah,
was
I will say, speaking of UTA, real quick, a little throwback. You know where Star Jacobs is now?
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, yeah. Okay, making
Hey,
sure.
you as SEC, nothing gets by me. Nothing gets by me.
Just making sure because I know she had some eligibility issues when she tried to go to Grambling, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so yeah, she's in now. She's at Ole Miss, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, so we'll get to see her. Coach Yo tried to reload over there.
There
We'll
you go.
see.
We'll see. But anyway, yeah, moving on to SFA.
9 and 10.
Yeah.
Y'all's guess is as good as mine. No, I'm just kidding. But SFA, I think, partially gets benefit of the doubt because they are moving to the Southland, and I think SFA clearly will have just an inherited talent advantage at some spots here. Like I just think years of recruiting, years of being competitive in the WAC, and years of obviously being great in the WAC. Even if we think they are down and a lot of their players have left, I still think I trust their evaluations in the portal. They added
Yeah.
a player, Ashlyn Traylor from Radford, who was very good. They returned Trinity Moore and Itau Tosaula, who I probably butchered the name, but they have enough talent here. I think they should be fine in the Southland. So they
Yeah.
get to 9 kind of by default. And then at 10, I was looking and I was scrolling, and there was Houston right there, who we said they're
Oh,
back, like clearly their backcourt is better than their front court,
yeah.
but they make the list. Malia Johnson returns, Peyton McFarland returns. They add Kiera Edmonds from Wagner, who was a good player at Wagner. So
Yeah.
that's 3 players that should, like Coach Huey said, they should be, able to play in the Big 12, able to
Right.
compete in the Big 12. So I have no problem putting 3 players that I think are pretty talented
Yeah.
on this list.
I'm just imagining that point spread margin versus Iowa State. With Houston. It's like I like this front court. Audie Crooks is gonna have like 25 and 30 against this team. Oh my goodness. And then
yeah,
Addie Brown as well. I forgot Addie Brown's also on that. So it's like, I don't know. Specifically Iowa State, I'm worried about that matchup.
yeah.
I'm just like, this is going to be nightmarish for.
Maybe they can match up with like TCU or Baylor or something, but
No, not even TCU. No. Who goes against Sonoma Prince?
No,
Oh, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be rough.
it's gonna be rough. But shout out Coach Huey. We
I love
friend of
Coach
the
Huey.
friend
Yeah,
of the
no, he's great.
podcast. We'll be rooting, but yeah, it's not looking great. And as far as honorable mentions,
I was
did
gonna
write.
say, like, as far as like, you can look at the backcourt and say like, oh, this team can work their way. I don't know who works their way into the top 10. Like your guess is as good as mine when it comes to like who can potentially work their way into this team.
Well, I tried to go through every team I could.
Yeah.
And there is a big disparity, I think, this year from the bottom and the top of our women's basketball coverage.
Yes.
We have legitimately, like we talked about, we have like 8, 9 teams that are going to be competing for conference championships or should be. And then we have the rest that are kind of just Sam Houston State won 2 games last year. Like Houston Christian, the SWAC schools aren't
I was about to say
great.
SWAC's definitely not in the discussion right now.
Yeah, it's like Texas Tech's going to struggle. SMU, I looked at them, and in the AAC, I think they were projected 16th, somewhere around there. It's like, there's just going to be a big disparity, and somebody will surprise us. assuredly.
Sure.
I looked at A&M Commerce. That is one other one we looked at.
Mm.
But they also have a good amount of transfers and turnover, and just kind of their returners didn't really stand out, so I didn't put them here.
Right.
Dante Embry from SMU is one returner worth noting here. A&M Corpus Christi, Torrey Sevier is another one. So, A&M Corpus Christi rebuilding that front court a bit. Like we said,
Yeah.
they have a lot of returners in the backcourt, but we'll see. But yeah, that's a peek into what I was doing at 2 a.m. last night, trying to figure out who to put on this list.
Yeah, man, it's one of those years where I feel like we're gonna get a lot of programs are gonna get a lot of reality checks and come to some decisions. Similar to, I think we were that way last year with men's basketball, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of those teams, and we saw some of the teams that made decisions. Obviously, one like SMU we didn't expect, but like Rice made a decision, UTSA made a decision, right? It was like I think we're coming to that point where
SMU. Oh yeah,
SMU.
like you said. Sorry.
Yeah, no. But it was like I think we're coming to that point where we're coming to those decisions where I think it's probably women's basketball's turn, because you mentioned it. We're starting to get to especially in this era of realignment too, like NIL and realignment, like the haves are just going to continue to have more. And it's like, okay, do we have, if you're an SM, like, is this the year we see whatever the equivalent of in the women's game would be SMU looking at it and saying, is this good enough? Right?
Mhm.
Like, we're good, but is this good enough to where we need to be? I don't know, right? Is SMU's women's basketball right now capable of competing in the ACC? I probably not, right?
Yeah.
So is this a year where we kind of see them make some moves? I'm not saying coaching wise, I'm just saying like do we just see them go and pull like a TCU from a couple of years ago, where it's like, let's just bring in all these 1 years to maybe make a run or something? I don't know. Regardless, that's what looking at this list kind of signals to me, because either some of these rosters aren't good enough, some of these the development's not there, or what. But there is a clear, like you mentioned it, like 8 or like 8 in the front courts, especially 8 teams that have really good front courts, or at least front courts that can compete. And then, but guess what? We got 24 teams in the state.
25.
25 teams, sorry, with
Yeah.
Commerce. Yeah.
Like, again, yeah, like we said, like for SWAC teams not to be at the top at some point. I mean, recruiting out of Houston, I feel like you should have something
you should
going
have
over
something.
there.
The fact that again, we know the Southern men were down a little bit last year, but like the fact that they can get a Grayson Carter, right?
Yeah.
Like you should be able to get a
Drop
caliber
back.
player, a
Yeah.
conference caliber player.
I mean, heck, Pine Bluff had Star Jacobs last year.
I mean,
They got her, signed
they
her.
got her on campus. You are right. You are
Signed her
correct.
at some point. But again, like UTEP, Sam Houston, Houston. I mean, I don't want to. Texas State's under some pressure
No,
too.
yeah, no, trust me.
At this point.
There's been some people who are like, hey, is this going to be a move that,
Yeah.
like, is this going to be, are we going to be put up with this? Because it was like they've been, ever since
They've been
that
so
all
good.
in year with the seniors,
now
they've been
it's-
kind of treading water.
Yeah. So very interesting.
Mhm.
Next week we will be back with our fantasy draft, picking our teams for the year. I'll go find last year so we can reflect on who won. I think it was me.
Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
definitely won.
take full credit of it.
I definitely won.
So we'll have fun with that and further preview the state and preview the top players in the state and kind of get into it. So yeah, thank y'all for joining us. Leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. On YouTube, we are at the DCTF page. So obviously most of y'all are already subscribed for the football coverage. So we appreciate y'all checking us out. Yeah, we'll have a lot more coming up. So we will talk to y'all then.